On August 1st, 1776, Samuel Adams gave a speech before the Philadelphia State House. What today is set in stone and bronze for our young children to visit on school field trips was then but a fleeting vision, ephemeral, and no more set in stone than the words spoken by the men of the convention as they spoke them. We take for granted that the course set by those great men should have been successful, but at that time, it was far from sure that this would be the case. Amidst this tumultuous beginning, Samuel Adams spoke these words. Nature made no other distinction than that of higher or lower degrees of power of mind and body. But what mysterious distribution of character has the craft of statesmen introduced? According to their doctrine, the offspring of perhaps the lewd embraces of a successful invader shall, from generation to generation, arrogate the right of lavishing on their pleasures a proportion of the fruits of the earth more than sufficient to supply the wants of thousands of their fellow creatures, claim authority to manage them like beasts of burden, and without superior industry, capacity, or virtue, nay, though disgraceful to humanity by their ignorance, intemperance, and brutality, shall be deemed best calculated to frame laws and to consult for the welfare of society. Were the talents and virtues which heaven has bestowed on men given merely to make them more obedient drudges, to be sacrificed to the follies and ambition of a few? Or were not the noble gifts so equally dispensed with a divine purpose and law that they should as nearly as possible be equally exerted, and the blessings of providence be equally enjoyed by all? What an affront to the King of the universe to maintain that the happiness of a monster sunk in debauchery and spreading desolation and murder among men, of a Caligula, a Nero, or a Charles, is more precious in his sight than that of 1,000,000 of his supplicant creatures, who do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with their God. No, in the judgment of heaven there is no other superiority among men than a superiority in wisdom and virtue. With these words was the revolution given purpose and meaning. With these words were our forefathers, spiritual or physical, driven to build a new nation that reflected the justice of the natural order. Yet today, we, the material or intellectual descendants of those men, give away willingly what they bled and fought to achieve. We submit our liberty ever more thoroughly to the whims of a bureaucratically empowered few, who regulate our every breath, act, decision, and even word. Today we applaud as our government decides who shall receive what from the common pot that has been stolen from all. By what virtue is it that a man more endowed with what Adams called the higher degree of power of mind or body shall rule his lesser kin all the days of their lives? By what natural order is it that one with higher intellect shall take the liberty of the one with lower and live on his toil? Is this more just than if a man with a higher power of body took from one who was weaker than he? We live content to allow men with no more virtue or wisdom than us, indeed, in many cases far less, to run the affairs of all, simply on the basis of a power of mind. These men show us perpetually that they are not wise, they are not virtuous. Who would call the denizens of today's Washington, D.C. virtuous, I wonder? These, virtue and wisdom, were the measures Adams used to judge men, not their brute strength or brute intellect. Yet those who criticize the mental aristocracy are called anti-intellectual and unintelligent. They are called rubes and hicks and worse things by the guardians of power on the television. Our experts tell us that the 5 pillars of our future success shall be regulation, education, alternative energy, healthcare, and cuts in our national budget. We are told that regulation, the making of more rules by more experts to control more of our private sector, is necessary and beneficial. If only a rule can be created to stop any action a man might take to cause harm, then there will be no harm. In education, we shall not have choice, we shall not decide where to send our children, but the choice shall be made by the experts. If only more control can be given to smarter people, we will fix the problems in our education system. In alternative energy, we are told that experts and the intelligent class have foretold with perfect accuracy the climate of our Earth for 1,000 years, when they cannot foretell the climate next week with precision. In healthcare, experts will helpfully remove from us the power of choice yet again. They will decide whether or not our relatives should be left on life support based on the cost of maintaining them. They will create quality metrics to determine what procedures are optimal and therefore available, and what procedures will be too inefficient to allow us to have. In the realm of our national budget, we are to believe that the addition of trillions of dollars in spending is necessary, yet somehow the budget will be cut. Somehow the government, bloated by the tripling of our national debt, will shrink. Somehow an economy strangled by inflation shall prosper. To expand is to cut, to grow is to shrink, to consume all is to diet. We believe them in all this because they are smart. There is, said Ronald Reagan, a threat posed to human freedom by the enormous power of the modern state. History teaches the dangers of government that overreaches, political control taking precedence over free economic growth, secret police, mindless bureaucracy, all combining to stifle individual excellence and personal freedom. We may not have secret police, but we have just tripled the size of our mindless bureaucracy. Do not place such an implicit faith in the experts who rule us, that you rely on them to live for you. For that government which takes care of all your needs is the same from which there is no escape, and in which no liberty. Samuel Adams warned us against complacency in that speech in Philadelphia. When the spirit of liberty which now animates our hearts and gives success to our arms is extinct, our numbers will accelerate our ruin and render us easier victims to tyranny. Though that tyranny is not the tyranny of one who claims right of lineage, but one who claims right by virtue of intelligence, nevertheless, Nero is still Nero, Caligula is Caligula, and bureaucracy still mindless.